A good evening and welcome to the Fourth Estate. The dominant story from the news this week was the election of the Speaker and Deputy Speaker of Parliament respectively. And of course, that result overturned the incumbent Rebecca Kadaga and produced Jacob Oulanyah as the new Speaker of Parliament. We're going to discuss that in tandem with the new leadership of the opposition in Parliament. And to discuss that, we have with us Eriasa Mchibi, who is from the Nation Media Group. Eriasa, now your job title changed. I don't know whether I should still be referring to you as from the Daily Monitor.
Yeah, you said it changed, and you said I come from the Nation Media Group.
Yes, but just you need to tell people what it is you do in the Nation Media Group. You're my boss.
Oh, you want to? Yeah. I didn't know that. But I mean, it's important because we are working to create a user hub. So they just designated me as head of the user hub, Nation Media Group. And the user hub, basically, it is supposed to help us understand more about our users. I was going to say readers, but that would only mean we are talking about the the paper. We are also talking about TV, we are talking about the website. Technology now enables us to gather a lot of analytics about user behavior, what is it that they want, what is it that they feel needs to improve. So you monitor what you do, you monitor what competition does, and maybe best practice around the world, and try to come up with a strategy on how then we may respond and renew our content as we transform from a news company to a content company. Yes.
Congratulations. As the Fourth Estate, we are very glad that one of our own is now in things. They like to say. I also have Herbert Ziwa who's joining us for the first time. Herbert Ziwa is our chief parliamentary reporter here and the chief political reporter. And Herbert, you've covered this story from start to finish. And I think that that's where I want to start. From the point of last Sunday when this show happened, NRM had just come out of its Central Executive Committee and had endorsed Jacob Oulanyah, but Rebecca Kadaga opted to go at it independent. Did you know from then that she was going to lose the vote, or was it still out to chance?
All right. Good evening, viewers, wherever you're watching from, and thank you, Raymond, for hosting me. From the onset, after the decision that was reached by the Central Executive Committee of NRM, it was obvious that whoever had been endorsed by the party would be the Speaker of the next Parliament. Looking at how NRM has been operating and how MPs from the NRM have been behaving in the House, in that decision of the party to many of them is final and can't be challenged by whatever force. So when Rebecca Kadaga moved out of protest, we were in Entebbe. You know, when someone receives news for the first time, of course they receive it with shock. Many MPs, even those that were supporting Kadaga, were in shock. But when this voice of the elder came out, spoke to them, explained why SEC had taken such a decision, the thinking and the talk of many MPs who were returning from Entebbe obviously changed. And the phone calls and the lobbying that the president did in the night, that Sunday night and early morning on that very Monday, because by the time we reached, Kadaga was one of the first MPs to reach at Kololo. In fact, she was there as early as 8 a.m. The MPs from NRM took another 2 hours before they reached Kololo. So from probably 7 to 10, a lot was happening, because you would see empty seats of NRM and occupied seats of the opposition. So from Sunday, it was well laid out that Oulanyah would have the numbers because of the influence and the strength of the party and the voice of the party chairman, Yoweri Museveni, and what he has been doing previously, the forces he has been using to ensure that he gets his way in Parliament.
Eriasa, there had been some analysts who had even claimed at the end of Sunday night that it was very likely that the NRM could be split based off of what came out of the Speaker's race. A week later now, it doesn't look like the NRM was split, but a 198 vote margin for Kadaga definitely speaks something. It says that Kadaga's mobilization crossed party lines. From watching the speaker's race, would you say that the NRM has factions that it needs to address after the speaker's vote?
I actually wouldn't have been one of those to suspect that the NRM would split whatever would happen to former Speaker Kadaga, because it doesn't matter actually. And if you look at how she did her politics and then you monitor the fallout, there was nothing special about it. There's nothing fundamental that she was disagreeing with her party about. The disagreement was about a placement where she insists on being speaker, and the party doesn't think so. If you want to compare that to what has gone before, people come out and say, you see, it's about time. You cannot say that we can change, for instance, the removal of term limits. Then guys are discussing and saying, you see, we have been talking about longevity and power, attempts to cling to power, and that can potentially cause problems. I mean, people can listen to that, and you'd think maybe there is, or when Besigye in 1999 broke ranks and he said, you see, and he wrote that document of his, an insider's account of how the movement lost the broad base. He's explaining things that have systemically gone wrong over time, and he's saying that I don't trust that the current leadership under whose watch this has happened has caused the problem. Rebecca Kadaga did not articulate any serious differences with her party. She did not say she was even breaking away from the party. She just said she wants to remain the Speaker of Parliament using the organs of the same party that now says she cannot be. So I don't think anybody would reasonably anticipate that she would, cause a serious problem or break away from the party.
Habaziwa, from the nature of the reporting on the story of Jacob Olanya and Kadaga, a lot of journalists were talking about what was happening inside the camps of these two principals. But very few people were telling us what was happening actually in the backyard of the NRM. The Central Executive Committee had met, I think, at least 3 times to resolve this matter and failed. No one was telling us what was it about SEC that caused all these meetings until very finally the decision came at the tail end on Sunday. From what you know and members in SEC, what is it that transpired at the back end? What kind of calls were being made? What kind of considerations were being made to back Olanya and not Kadaga?
I think the greatest consideration was to do with party loyalty. How loyal was the candidate, Kadaga and Olanya, to the party and to the principle of the party. That was very important and critical. Even the critics of Kadaga would tell you that she had become a problem to the party, looking at her last 5 years in parliament, especially that motion of displeasure. I don't know whether you remember it, after sharing the 10 billion shillings. That motion of displeasure rubbed many people the wrong way, including the president. And openly has been coming out before the elections that he even thought of attacking parliament, physically come to parliament and force the legislature to withdraw that motion. So I think from that time, the SEC members, even those who were historically against Kadaga. For example, if you look at Godfrey Chiwanda Subi, now the vice chairperson for Buganda region, if you go back to the 2016 elections for the speaker, he was the campaign manager for Jacob Olanya. So definitely you would see where his vote would lie. There are also people like the likes of Justin Kaswe-Lumumba, the party secretary general of NRM, who have differences with the the former speaker. Look at the likes of Nankabirwa. So, in SEC, Kadaga never had that upper hand compared to Olanya. Because Olanya is considered, or was considered before the race, as a loyal card. A person who will come to the house and execute the script of the party and the party chairman. And if you have the two on the board, who do you go with? A person who is going to give you a headache in the house, or a person who is going to tow your party line? I think the decision had to be in favor of Olanya.
Yes, let's talk about the deal with the devil. For the NRM, it's okay for them to have their day in Parliament. For the opposition, on the other hand, it's important that at the very least, Parliament remains as a center of accountability. And yet, it looks like at the back ends of it, Kadaga had struck a deal with the opposition, which took out an opposition stalwart in Semuju, just 15 votes.
Yeah, if you may, just let me comment a bit on what I was discussing, actually, because it's been, I think, a number of years. The signs have been very clear on the wall that Rebecca Kadaga could not, by any chance, return as Speaker under NRM. For instance, if you look at the 20 million shillings during COVID per MP, that 10 billion shillings that the Parliamentary Commission had decided to give away, I suspect why the President came out with full force to ensure that the money would not appear to have been given to the MPs, courtesy of the Speaker, and then he would, according to reports, then turn around and give many of those same MPs even double the money. The issue must have been, and there were already rumors, that the Speaker wants to come back next term. And she has a very strong feeling her party will not back her. So she did a lot, first of all, to try and reach out to the opposition with this recent vote in view. But also, she, for instance, if you just look at the 20 million, if the Speaker has said, don't explain anything, it's on me. I'm the one to explain. So she anticipates that a number of these ones will come back, and they will know how strong a Speaker I was. I can even dispense favors using money directly from the consolidated fund. I've helped their campaign. Those who have gone through campaigns will tell you 20 million shillings can be a very big push at any one point in one's campaign. And I think the President was intent, he knew what she was trying to do, and he was not going to let that happen. If you kept tabs on what people were saying, key government spokespeople like Ofono Pondo, they were clearly sending out the signals that it is not possible that Kadaga would come back. So it was clear. So, and I think that naturally, because Kadaga for some reason was insistent on ensuring that she remained as Speaker, so she was naturally going to try to ally with people who may not be inclined to support the official NRM position. So Bobby Wine then was a popular guy who was planning to run for president, and I think they did, she did a lot of reaching out to see how many MPs can you bring, then who can come in as independent, and then who within NRM can we quote for using any other reason that is there. She tried to play the women card prominently and other things. So I think basically that's what was going, and by the time many of the MPs go to Parliament, they were already so, they got elected, they were already so somehow attached. They have tried to explain away the issue, but the process had been on for years actually. In my view.
Yes, the question that I wanted you to respond to was, in the heat of all this campaigning, the press really concentrated on Kadaga and Olanya. But at the back ends of it, it looked like the opposition itself was cutting its own deals. You had a candidate in the race in Semuju Nganda, who is a galvanizing force. He won from Kira municipality. He's really an acceptable face to the National Unity Platform. He's an acceptable face to the Democratic Party or even the Uganda People's Congress. And yet, after the vote was done, He only had 15 votes. That's not even the members of FDC in parliament. And we know for a fact that some people who voted him are not even members of the FDC.
Yeah, I only beg to differ. Actually, SEMJU is not an acceptable force as far as NUP is concerned. They have had their issues. You see, within FDC, there was that very big debate going into the election as to whether they should front a candidate of their own, a presidential candidate. And SEMJU was one of those people who, for some reason, was not enthused by what Kyagulanyi presented, the Nandala Mafabi line and whatever. So they had to front power as their own candidate. Then there were some who were disposed towards maybe having Bobi Wine as the joint opposition candidate and then fielding different MPs candidates from different parties. I think that is where Yusuf Nsibambi lies. So that's why you'd find Yusuf Nsibambi is a more acceptable figure, even if his FDC is more acceptable within the NUP ranks than SEMJU Nganda. So when it got to the election, you would clearly see that, anticipate that SEMJU would not get the votes from NUP. Maybe. But what I didn't understand is why NUP, of course I understood it, I phrased it badly, but what I wanted to say, NUP itself did not look to front a candidate for the speakership because they were already beholden to the Kadaga camp, as I had said.
Maybe to chip in, from the onset, NUP and FDC have fundamental differences. I think one of the issues they have is that NUP came and took over the position of the FDC. So even before this race for speakership, FDC and National Unity Platform were not at the same page. So it was likely to be very hard for a candidate of FDC or even a candidate of NUP to be supported by either parties. And then secondly, what were the chances of SEMJU winning this election? That was also an argument among many members of the National Unity Platform and even members within the FDC. We are 32. What are the chances of our candidate? Even if even without looking at the principles, even if we all vote for him, the 32, or even the entire opposition, what are his chances? So that's why I think many of them, like especially those in the opposition, came to a conclusion that between Oulanya and Kadaga, who is more friendly? Who is a friendly force? That is Kadaga. Let's go and vote for her. But aside from that, I know for a fact that separately, both camps, Kadaga and Oulanya, reached out to the opposition. But the only difference was that Oulanya was more tactical, that openly he reached out to the good opposition. That's why he went, I remember that press conference he had at Kabirakira. He had the UPC opposition. And the person who seconded his candidature is Betty Amongi of the good UPC. What did Kadaga do? He had, when she was launching at Munyonyo, she had the core opposition. You have Asmani Basalirwa, you have the likes of Bashir Mbazira, you have the Nsambas who ran away from NRM, they are now core opposition. So it looks like it is them, the opposition, versus us, the NRM. So that's why I said in the beginning that the decision of the Central Executive Committee of NRM was just delayed, but it was obvious that it would not be in the favor of Kadaga. It was just delayed. Even that postponement we had, that they failed to agree on Saturday, then they had to have a meeting early. It was just buying time. I think the big man wanted to gauge the reaction and also buy time to make his decisions very swift and close the chapter.
We are going to take a break, but when we get back, we'll start with Eriasa's thoughts on this matter. But I also want us to talk about the new leadership of opposition in parliament. But let's take a very short break. When we get back, we continue the conversation. Thank you so much for staying with us on the Fourth Estate. Of course, we're discussing the speakership race, which threw out Rebecca Kadaga and brought in Jacob Oulanya, and interestingly also brought in Anita Among. We haven't yet discussed the deputy speakership race. I know there's also politics down there. But Eriasa, you had something to say before we took the break.
Yeah, because I wanted to take up one issue from what my colleague said here about the opposition people being maybe choosing to pick one of the two NRM candidates since they did not have the numbers. And I have listened to so many NUP and some other people, even some from FDC, by the way, because more than half of the FDC MPs did not vote for Semju. If he got 14 votes from the rest and one for him, then about 17 or so did not vote for him. But
the other vote is from NUP, the person who...
I don't know. Assuming it is... He did not... Sewanya didn't say, he's the one who proposed him, actually. Proposed his name. So there was an issue, and I think because the Kadaga-Olanya race was very, very stiff, there was a direct attempt from, I think, the state, not just Rebecca Kadaga's side, to ensure that the opposition was very confused in the way they did things. And I think that is more easily discernible from how the deputy speaker race went, what you're talking about, because you have clearly one person who crossed from the opposition and joined NRM, the Right Honorable Anita Among now, and then you have two people, one independent, has never been in the opposition, but he has, and then you have Yusuf Nsibambi. And still you see that many of the opposition votes go to Anita Among without any questions. So I think the issue was, if we let one person compete with the other one directly, then it is going to be very difficult. I saw a number of attempts to even bring in, someone proposed the Honorable Sejirinya, another one this and that. I think to try and make the race something to laugh about. And why many opposition MPs would decide to pick the Honorable Anita and leave, especially the Honorable Nsibambi, who is opposition, and by the way, more acceptable to the FDC and NUP guys than Semju is, although he got a bit more votes, 35 or so, but he would still have got a lot more. And the argument that has been used, in my opinion, is laughable for them to say that, you see, even if we all voted for the opposition candidate, we would still not win. Because then I would ask them, why are they in parliament now? Why don't they resign? Because parliament, whenever there are contestations, it is going to end in a vote. But what you want to do is, first of all, to hold your ground and persuade others to join you. If you have about 110 votes in the opposition, and all those are opposition votes, then you say, we now want to build on this and convince the others. That is how they are going to work. If there are decisions to be taken in parliament with which they don't agree, they are going to try to convince the other people from across the divide. Now they have showed from the start that they won't be doing that, so they are going to parliament to put up their hands whenever there is a vote, because I think the important thing is for them to make an argument that, you see, this is what is right. The numbers will not always be what decides everything. And even you, NRM people, have to exercise, to use your conscience. Now, this is important.
But Eriasa, the other flip side to the argument is that this is the first time in the history of Uganda that a candidate opposing in the speakership race has gotten that number of votes in Rebecca Kadaga. Previous candidates like Hande Sereko have gotten far much less votes, and they haven't been supported by the entire opposition. In fact, it's very rare that the opposition have a strong candidate in the speakership race. Is it maybe just this issue about the speakership where the opposition is always divided, looking for someone that can win? Or is it that will continue to be the trend for the next 5 years?
I want also to note that this is the first time for an opposition candidate to get only 15 votes. I think, I don't remember the exact number, but there were more than the number of, I think the same number of the FDC MPs that the Honorable Nandala Mafavi got last time. So that is also important. So the issue is why Speaker Kadaga got more votes than any other losing candidate in the speaker race is because it is the first time somebody of her stature is losing the vote. The last time she was voted in, the first time she was voted in as speaker, the second did not stand. Yeah. If he had stood, maybe Parliament would have been divided. If in 2016, Jacob Olanya had decided to stand, it is likely he could have got more votes than he actually got.
How about Ziwa? Let's now talk about the actual intricacies within Parliament. Now the Parliament has started, without a doubt. The opposition leadership has submitted the names of people that should be in the leadership of the opposition. And the National Unity Platform seems to have sent a very clear message that they are not ready to work with the Forum for Democratic Change. We've seen the list and the lineup. Many of the stalwarts of FDC who've been holding on to committees have not bounced back in this opposition leadership. Is this a signal that we are going to have a divided opposition for the coming 5 years?
That is obvious. But if you look back, it has been the practice. When FDC was holding on to the opposition in Parliament, all the committees were headed by people from the FDC. It's only in the shadow cabinet that you would have other political parties. So there's nothing that has changed this time around. And like what I've said before, that FDC and NUP fundamentally have differences. So even at this time of appointing the leadership positions of the opposition in Parliament, those differences were bound to be seen, and they have been seen. But to look at the appointments that have come out, you would clearly see that Chagulanyi and the leadership of NUP has tried to balance experience and the new faces that are within the National Unity Platform. That's why you see people like Matthias Mpug had an upper hand, people like Segona, because there are committees where you need experience, you need people who have the institutional memory, people who have been there, maybe as committee members, as vice chairpersons of the committees, to come and chair these committees than the new people who are coming in for the first time. And remember this lot of the NUP leaders, MPs, they're still young people without, many of them do not have this political exposure, others just from high school, from university, from nowhere they are now in Parliament. So they need that mentorship. I think NUP tried to strike a balance between experience from people who have been in the House and maybe the party loyalty.
Eriasa, what story are we missing in the opposition? I saw that the Observer and the Daily Monitor tried their hands at explaining the intricacies in the opposition. The Observer reported that the National Unity Platform had tried to reach out to FDC and not gotten any response in return. But I saw that I think both the Monitor and other independent online press saying that the FDC had responded through their Secretary General and asked for the agenda of the meeting, what should have the meeting constituted itself about. But the opposition is not known to speak in formal terms with each other. In any case, we're used to an opposition where they gather at the home of a leader and make an agreement and come out and present that agreement much later. Is the nature and mode of boggling us down in this officialdom? Is the opposition trying to confuse the press by telling them this officialdom? Does it require, okay, in simple questions, does it require a Bobby Wine letter to Nandala Mafavi for FDC and the National Unity Platform to talk?
Yeah, I don't know. And I was watching I think on one television station, and the NUP Secretary General put that directly to Norbert Mao, the leader of the Democratic Party, that he did not respond to the letter that had been written, and then Mao had to draw his phone, go into his WhatsApp messages and show how he had responded, and there had been conversation with the NUP president. And he said, maybe it is because you are not aware of what's happening, but that is, but the truth is that we are talking, The formal letter may not come, or it may take a long time, but these are the contents of our response. Yeah, but the issue is, of course, NUP is a political party, and they will try to play around so many other issues. The FDC guys will feel, or even DP, that these guys are trying to gain some upper hand by pretending to look like they are the ones who want to reach out, and the other way around. So that is to be expected. Ziwa thinks there are fundamental differences between FDC and the NUP. I don't think so, because fundamental would mean maybe there is something of a policy nature or whatever that they disagree about. But the issue has been that bickering, and some people, he has also said that it is about now NUP replacing the FDC as the leading opposition party, which is important because no one wants to lose their ground. So there are going to be those issues, and then there are going to be personal differences. You are going to find politicians within the FDC who don't, for instance, rate some leaders within the NUP, and therefore they don't think that these people can actually take us forward. You're going to find leaders within the FDC who feel that we should not even at all participate in the leadership of the opposition in parliament. Let NUP have their chance, and Ugandans can judge. Then there are those who want to just come in, and maybe if we had time, we would have discussed about the quality of our parliament. And I think we have a strong problem with especially party leaders, starting with Kiza Besigye. If you look at Mugisha Muntu, now even Norbert Mao, whatever, it's difficult to find a political party that has its leader in parliament. And most of their politics, they don't think it is going to happen a lot in parliament. I think they don't put a lot of emphasis on what happens in parliament, and many guys who go there to see how they can enhance their income, if we can put it bluntly. And so when people fight for committees, fight for this and that, it is an opportunity for somebody then to get money to get re-elected, and things like that.
Ziwa, as we wrap this up, what is now going to be the biggest story from Parliament this coming week? We know that a cabinet is coming, whichever way and manner and form within which it comes, a cabinet is coming. But there are also backbench opinions at the moment. What do you think is going to be the big story in Parliament this week?
That's a very hard question for me to predict what is likely to be big next week. But as you've said, I think the appointments within the new cabinet, because there are already rumors that some faces we've been seeing in the opposition might be in the new cabinet of Museveni. I think that will be shocking to some, but to some of us who have been covering politics and following the events, it will not be shocking, because that is typical Museveni. That is the way he operates. He never gives chances. The other big story I would think would come out of Parliament would be how the other positions on the shadow cabinet are going to be filled. Will the FDC accept to be part of the shadow cabinet? Because already NUP has showed them that for committees and the leadership, the core leadership of Parliament, you're not needed. So will they be part of the bigger shadow cabinet? That we look forward to see what will happen next week, whether they will accept that.
Eriasa, what do you think will be the big stories out of Parliament in this coming week?
I'm so looking forward to who will be vice president, because there's been.
Do you want to take a guess?
Because I think the president will first name the vice president and the prime minister for because does SEC sit today?
Yes, SEC is
again
sitting.
To determine. Was supposed to sit on Friday, I think, to determine the commissioners and the people who will be, I think, on the appointments committee. In order
they are
for them,
determining their chief whip and the commissioners.
yeah, so that they could then help vet the top positions. And because Rebecca Kadaga's name has been all over the place, I am anxious to see if she'll be the vice president after everything that she said, including the fact, stating that she doesn't want to be number 2, or it is going to be someone else.
But
and there's serious lobbying on that position of vice president in favor of Kadaga. Even people who openly supported Jacob Oulanyah are now coming out to lobby the president to find space.
But in the grand prism of state building, she's not Catholic, she's Anglican. She's from Busoga, not literally from Buganda, which just routed the NRM in the election. Busoga didn't give their vote to Museveni. Also, I just struggle to see,
Raymond,
in terms of state building, how
she's now playing. I think we are slowly moving away from that. If you have Oulanyah, number 3, and you have the Chief Justice, almost coming from the same district or same sub-region, it is obvious that you can have a vice president coming from elsewhere, not in central, even eastern Uganda.
Some of the sources I speak to also say she's ambitious, which is deadly for a vice president to hold and have ambitions for the top seat in the land. Do you think that these factors will affect Eriasa? Do you think they'll affect her standing as vice president?
Do you think the current vice president is ambitious? My answer is yes.
He hasn't disclosed, at least.
How do you rise to become number 2 and you have been a politician for decades and whatever, and you are not ambitious? It is. I think it just.
It's an insult.
Yeah. No. it's about how you show it or don't show it. But all of them are ambitious.
All right. Thank you so much, Eriasa. Thank you so much, Ahmad Ziwa, for discussing with us the issues coming out of Parliament, particularly the Speakership race and the Cabinet. Of course, the Fourth Estate focuses on how journalism covered the big stories of the week and how we should take angles to them. Of course, do see you again next week as we discuss the bigger stories of the week.